Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, bringing you a brand new video. And for what feels like the first time in a very long time, I am streaming live. We're going to be talking about Summer Blockbuster Season 2025, which I think in a nice way we can say has coming to an end or come to an end. The major releases have stopped of the big blockbuster launches. There's been a big summer of films of huge budgets, films that perform well, films that haven't, and kind of doing something different. I don't think we've really spoke about it on the channel before. We're going to be sort of having a recap or taking a look into that summer blockbuster season. So I've put it as the winners and losers. And for anybody curious to the concept of this video, if you're watching live, you're more than welcome to comment. I'm going to basically be going through the summer releases, and I'm not here to give reviews on every single one. I'll give my thoughts on them if I've seen them. I've not seen every film that's come out this year. That would be impossible. But what I will be doing my absolute best is to discuss how those films have performed, whether that be with critics, with audience, how I thought myself, how other people have thought, not trying to be egotistical in the process of this, also not trying to sound like a Wikipedia page, but there are certainly interesting films to talk about, franchises, long-term franchises, new franchises, which I think could benefit from a discussion point. So that leads me into where I'm going next with this. So if you are watching it live, please do comment your thoughts on Summer Blockbuster season for this year. I will obviously bring them up on the stream. Films you've enjoyed, films you haven't, ones that surprised you, ones that maybe underperformed, or ones other people haven't seen. If you think I'm missing some films, I've made some educated cuts to the video. I've put some very low budget films on here that I think are worth talking about, but I haven't really tried to, bring up every film that's come out across the last 4 months, because that would be absolutely insane. So it's going to be a little bit different. It's something I've not really done before. If you've been watching my series on the Harry Potter HBO book adaptations, you'll know that my battery overheats and on my main camera, and I can't really get more than like 30 to 40 minutes in a very cold room to be able to do it. So I'm going live on the laptop for this one for the first time in a while, which is great because I can talk with people. But if you're not watching it live, obviously I'll reply to any comments that do come up. And if you're curious by this video, by our releases, you can get us on our social medias, linktree.com/cinemasavvy. We'll put you through to our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Blue Sky. But that being said, let's talk a little bit more about this video. And the reason I say this is because I'm going to be talking about many films, and I've pulled up the calendar of American releases, or the American release dates. I've gone all the way back to April. Now, I know that April is technically still spring, but as far as I'm concerned, summer blockbuster season these days starts really after the Oscars, like April time. There's 3 films I'm going to talk about in April, but we know May's the traditional now summer blockbuster season has begun. But I do want to talk about a couple of other April releases, and I'll be going all the way through to the end of August, to which I'll be ending with a discussion on Nobody 2. I'll be looking at the highest grossing films of the year. I'll be giving my top 3 films of the summer and my most anticipated films for the rest of 2025. So I guess it's time to get going with this. And I'm also going to plug, for many of these which we have reviewed, if you go on the playlist on our homepage, 2025 releases, any film we reviewed that we talk about is on there. And a lot of these are on there. So if you want my more in-depth thoughts, or are curious about my thoughts 3 months ago, 2 months ago, 1 month ago, maybe 2 weeks ago compared to now, that's what you're going to get. But obviously I'll be able to give my opinion on many of these and how I felt several months later, because these sorts of information we don't get when we're doing reviews, when we're talking about budgets, when we're talking about successes, performances, things that break records. We don't get the luxury of doing that. So I hope this works and is interesting, and I will naturally appreciate any feedback people do want to give on this, because we don't get to do as many streams these days. So let's get cracking. So April the 4th. Okay, a Minecraft movie released at cinemas. We all saw the videos. We saw what people were doing to cinemas, the ridiculous chicken jockey stuff. I honestly thought this was one of the worst films I've seen of the year. I can't say it's the worst film I've seen. It's just War of the Worlds, the Ice Cube version. But truly, I hated the Minecraft movie. I never played Minecraft, which really didn't help. But this film on a $150 million budget grossed $955 million. And I think that has to be spoken about. No matter what I think of that film, there is no denying its popularity and entertainment value. Now, whether it be the generations below, people older than me that maybe play these games, but certainly as younger generations, going up to the cinemas with the event status of throwing popcorn, throwing real live chickens, just utter nonsense. The film was a humongous success, and I thought it performed well. Family films are performing the best post COVID, but Minecraft grossing just under $1 billion. Thankfully, something beat it because that's the highest grossing film of the year, and its Rotten Tomatoes score, for what that's worth, was 48%. So critics obviously mixed on it, but it has been one of the biggest films of the year. There's no denying that, and I'm sure there'll be a sequel. Again, my opinion, you can watch the review. I hate it. I'm going to move on, but I'm going to talk maybe a little bit longer on this one. Sinners, released 18th of April, directed by Ryan Coogler, starring Michael B. Jordan. One of the best films of this year, if I'm totally honest with you on the spot. How I've thought about this film before on the stage. I still don't have it on Blu-ray. That's a reminder for payday tomorrow. But this sits on 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it's one of the highest rated films of the year if people care for that comparison. But what this did is an original concept from a director who I think is on his trajectory of being an auteur, who I think is one of the closest directors, I don't want to say we've had to Christopher Nolan, but Ryan Coogler feels like one of the only directors in the last 10, 15 years who is slowly becoming a brand by himself. I think moving away from Marvel. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with him doing Marvel and doing Black Panther 3, but for him to release an original film alongside a film that's performing exceptionally well with Minecraft at the cinemas on a $100 million budget, which some studios didn't like, which Warner Brothers took a big risk on, and you've got to give Warner Brothers their credit, and we'll be doing that a fair amount in this video today. It grossed 355 million films and is the highest grossing original film, I think I read, since 2010, which I'm assuming is Inception, but I could also be wrong. That record was broken 2 months later, but there's, to me, a humongous asterisk by the film that broke that record. But this cannot be understated how well this film performed. Being shot on IMAX 70mm, an absolute dream, an incredible film, and one of the best films of the year for me. I want to rewatch it, and I'm excited to rewatch it when I get the chance to do so. And it has to just be spoken about. I do think Ryan Coogler's career, and Ludwig Göransson's score, I expect this to be in the discussion at the Oscars, if I'm totally honest. I know it came out so early in April. We've seen in recent years the Oscars are open to looking at films from previous, so that's not an issue for me. Love Sinners. And then I'm going to talk about a 20-year-old film that I have to include on here because it re-released in April, the 20th anniversary of Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Not a summer blockbuster by any means. I'm not going to sit here talking about Rotten Tomatoes, but I need to talk about this, which is incredible. In a 1 week wide re-release, 20 years on, this film grossed $55 million. This was not released for anything more than 1 week. It had to be out of cinemas ready for Thunderbolt, but it grossed $55 million and is the second biggest re-release box office of all time after, you name it, the Star Wars special editions from the mid-90s. There is still an audience, clearly, that wants to see Star Wars at cinema, and the prequel generation certainly are there and did turn up, and that number is staggering. The highest grossing film of its release weekend. I did get to see it in 4DX, which was incredible in the most ridiculous way. It was a lot of fun, and I'm very happy for them. And we now have confirmation that they will be doing a big release in 2027 for Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope as it's celebrating its 50th anniversary, if you didn't know that already. So I'm very curious about how they'd perform in comparison. Then I'm curious about a comparison to last year. The Phantom Menace's 25th anniversary re-released. I think it grossed $15 million, $15 million, I think in maybe 2 weeks. But the fact that Revenge of the Sith did 55, again, Lucasfilm, market those re-releases, tell people what's coming up. They will go to the cinema, they will see it. And they absolutely nailed this. So credit to them involved. Lucasfilm do get a lot of slack at times, very fair to do so, but they nailed this re-release. You cannot deny it. And I mentioned the teaser, what's coming next. I'm going to talk about Thunderbolts now, which released on May the 2nd. A film, Thunderbolts Asterisk, The New Avengers. This released on the 2nd of May. And this is a really interesting one that I think I spoke about quite. We just did one video. We didn't just want a discussion. This is a film I loved. And this is a film that's actually quite high up on my ranking of the year so far. This is a film I went into with no expectation. The trailers did nothing for me at all. I really wasn't bothered by the announcement of this film. I wasn't bothered for the bar one or two. I wasn't really bothered about the cast heading into it. And I think that's fair to say this film connected with me on quite a different level to what I thought it would. and that's just me sort of re-going through the review. But even several months later, I'm looking back at the other Marvel film that came out this year, the other two Marvel from this year, and I think Thunderbolts is my favorite of the three. It just felt more real. And I don't mean that in a psychotic way, it's superhero films, but there was something about the story in this that I was just more gravitated towards. But we've got to talk about in the concept of this video. It had a Rotten Tomatoes of 88%, so it was clearly enjoyed by a lot of people. And on a budget of $180 million, it only goes $382 million. Now, for the sake of this video, traditionally when people talk about box office, I'm not here to say ha flop, ha hits. Some people live and die by box office, others don't. I think it's an integral part of film. We know it is. You need to make money. At the same time, people, it's very fair to say, are way too into it. They look at nothing but the financial side of it. They don't look at the creative side. They don't look at patterns, other things. They only look at this is how well it made, this is what it grossed. But what sort of blows my mind is, this is a $180 million film and it didn't look it, and the budgets are getting out of hand. And this is what's fun about this video. We're getting to see comparative budgets of certain films that blow up and certain films that don't, and where films are performing more so than often. The talk of the town is that Thunderbolts made Marvel a loss on its $180 million budget, grossing 382. By default, you would normally times it by 2. That's how the industry always sort of did it to determine what's a success and what isn't. Now, every film is different. They have different equations to that, and you get Hollywood financing involved. But Thunderbolts apparently needed $450 million to break even, which it absolutely should not need. Considering this is a sort of, the whole point of this film is that the new Avengers, right? It is the B-list heroes coming together to become an A-list team. It did not need that budget at all, if I'm totally honest and transparent. And it's sad that this underperformed, which leads into a conversation we're going to have a little bit later about the current state of play at Marvel. A film I haven't seen, which I'll be talking about, which I've had a lot of friends speak about this year to me, a film that performed very well. Final Destination Bloodlines released in cinemas, the first Final Destination film in a very long time. Now, I've seen a few of them, not all of them. I can't tell you which kill was from which, but I remember a lot of them. Like many people, you'll think of the trucks. And this film had some really good viral marketing to its credit. And I think if I'd have rewatched all the others, I probably would have gone and seen this. I just didn't. It's a film I've just not seen from this year. But on a $50 million budget, it grossed $287 million. So it's a huge hit. And it's an absolute win. And that's Warner Brothers again. Second time we'll be talking about them. And it's Rotten Tomatoes scores 93% for people that are curious by that. So Final Destination, whether it means they make more, I do not know. But it is clear as daylight that this film did well, and audiences turned up. People wanted to go and see this film, and it was good. So people kept going to see this film. So that's a nice little story there. Also, I don't mean nice as in nice for shooters. I don't care about them. But for the concept of the industry, it's nice, isn't it? Although it is another series. And speaking of other series, let's talk about a reboot. Lilo and Stitch released on the 23rd of May with a $100 million budget and grossed $1 billion and $32 million. Comfortably the biggest American release of the year so far. I know that Chinese animated film is the highest grossing film of this year. I think it's on 2.3 billion. Different websites have different box office fat, but everywhere except Box Office Mojo has put it 2.3 billion. But Lilo and Stitch grossing $1 billion. I really enjoyed this film. It's Rotten Tomatoes at 72%, and it is that Disney conversation, another live action remake. People can laugh and make jokes at Snow White that no one went and saw it, and they were correct. That film was a huge flop, but Snow White's budget was nearer 300 million. This one's budget was 100 million. It was a simplistic story. Yes, it's a remake of a one animated film, but people enjoyed it. Audiences turned up, and it speaks for itself. It's been the biggest film of Summer Blockbuster season. Yeah. Did you expect it not to be? Like, I'm genuinely curious, and I don't mean to be like an arrogant, entitled asshole, but when people will start waving numbers around and pretend they're box office gurus, any research that anyone can undertake, you've seen in recent years that the highest grossing films post-pandemic tend to be family films, animated films, basically where people are going to take their kids, or they're going to go multiple times, or they can keep going with other people. That's where the industry has moved to for, I guess you can say, broader financial success. And I think us talking about Minecraft and Lilo and Stitch does sort of cover that. And then we're going to follow up with a really interesting conversation with the next one that came out on the same day as Lilo and Stitch, Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. A film I love. This is one of my favorite films of the year. And I'm in a really weird state with this film where I can absolutely say I do not like the first hour of this film. all my issues with this film are in this first hour. It's probably like the issues I have the most of all Mission Impossible films. Yet that middle act and that final act pull it together to make it one of the best films of the year for me. I'm in such a weird conundrum of that. And it's Rotten Tomatoes is at 80%, 80%, which is understandable given those issues. And I wasn't alone in those issues. And I feel like there's so many people on the same wavelength, right? People that love this film, they're talking about these amazing stunts, these amazing set pieces, but that opening act is just bizarre, if I'm honest. And then we have a real conversation, and I don't mean to sound like a drone with this, but the film grossed $597 million at the box office, which is just under 30 million more than Dead Reckoning Part 1, which I think is very much worth mentioning, that the finale did gross more, albeit only 30 million more. That's obviously less than Fallout, than Ghost Protocol and Rogue Nation, I believe. But it's still $600 million for what's been a very successful franchise. And the talk of the town on if this film's a hit or not comes on the budget. This is supposedly one of the most expensive films ever made. They're talking about figures of $400 million for it to gross, let's say 600 for conversation's sake. That does not pull it into profit, which is wild. And I remember talking on the video with Tate on the spoiler discussion about MI, where I just said that whilst it probably will underperform because of the size of its budget, I don't think this was ever going to get like 800 million plus ever. I know Top Gun did, and Top Gun carried that summer, and it's a very different experience watching Top Gun Maverick to Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, two very different films, and obviously Top Gun's the much superior film in that respect, but Mission Impossible closing out an 8-film series, having a part 1 3 years ago now. Sorry. And I'm just not surprised by the performance. I'm happy with the performance. I think, again, for conversation, right, if it's a $200 million budget, they'd have said, lovely, 600 mil, but this was $400 million. And the craziest thing is, I'm not giving this a free pass in the conversation, but I think the Mission Impossible films had earned the outrageous budgets that they can't profit from. That this film said and done, it's got some of the best stunts I've ever seen in cinema. It's got some of the wildest set pieces I've ever seen on the big screen. And I see that $400 million budget. You know, I spoke about Thunderbolts earlier, $180 million budget. I don't see that. Okay, this is twice as much as that. And it's grossed almost, $300 million more than that. But I think you can look at Mission Impossible and its legacy and how the franchise has performed. I know Marvel's different because it is obviously the biggest franchise ever made in terms of money, but Thunderbolts within that franchise is its own new thing. Whereas again, Mission Impossible can get away with that, and it just sort of solidified Tom Cruise as the last action star. So I'm in a really blurry one. Like, I know this video is called Winner and Losers, and I don't have like a big green tick or a red cross. I think it's just sort of in no man's land. Do I think Paramount's gutted with how this film performed? I actually don't. I know that it's a loss to an extent, but for the money that Tom Cruise has brought in on this MI series over the sort of 3 decades, it's more than paid for itself, if I'm honest. And I think there'll be a conversation with that, and they'll look back at this and be very fond of it. And this will go down as one of the greatest franchises ever made, if I'm honest. So I'm sort of like neutral leading into, it's either like the smallest loss. No, it's either the smallest loss or it's the worst winner. Do you know what I mean? It's a weird one to talk about, but the legacy of that film will be so much more than what so many of us on this list are. So next up, I'm going to follow with a film that I liked, which I didn't think I would. Karate Kid Legends released on the 30th of May. The Rotten Tomatoes score was 58%. Famously a film that didn't do a press screening in the UK until after it came out, which is never a good sign. And on a moderate $45 million budget, it grossed $112 million at the box office. Now, that's a hit to an extent. It's really not much of a hit. It's like scraping the bottom of the barrel of, yes, this film was a success, if it is. Releasing it straight after Mission Impossible and Lilo and Stitch, why? Didn't make any sense. Missed the window post Cobra Kai and didn't really interact with Cobra Kai. I know it's Sony, I know Cobra Kai's Netflix, but I liked this film, and I'm actually surprised it grossed even 110 mil. I thought this was going to be like dead, like one of the biggest flops of the summer dead, but I guess not. And why that? Because it's got a lower budget. Its budget's $45 million. Yes, it's a blockbuster, and I put it in this video for the sake of the conversation, but if that's a $100 million budget, one of the biggest bombs of the year, but it's 45 mil, and I think to come out just all right. Not impressive, but it's just all right. And I'm going to follow this on the same day, and this isn't a blockbuster, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. The Phoenician Scheme released, which is the latest Wes Anderson film. Wes Anderson, clearly not a renowned blockbuster filmmaker, but he released his new film slap bang in the middle of blockbuster summer. On a $30 million budget, it grossed $39 million. Now, he isn't about a box office. Wes Anderson films, you know what you're going to get with them, particularly the more recent ones. They feel more and more repetitive in the marketing campaigns. The Rotten Tomatoes only sits at 78%. It's not a film I've seen many people speak about. It's not a film that was shown at many cinemas near me. Again, it came out in a possible window, but it didn't perform well. Maybe it's the filmmaker, maybe it's the release, maybe it's what type of film it is. But I find it interesting for Wes Anderson's film, they didn't want it out in award season. They wanted it out early, which maybe sort of summed up where it was going. So that's what I'll say on that one. Then we get to June. On June the 6th, with Ballerina come out, which was a film at the time I liked. And I say liked in past tense. I still like it now. I've not revisited it. But it's certainly something that didn't perform well. On a $90 billion budget and what seemed to be endless reshoots, it grossed $133 million at the box office, with a Rotten Tomatoes score of 76%, which is fine. There are some things I really liked in this film, and there are a lot of things I really didn't like about this film. And I think where I sit with it, where many of us do, was, I guess we can say, for them trying to make the John Wick franchise a series about John Wick in it, then John Wick has to be in it to save it, because he clearly wasn't going to be in it originally. Nothing against Ana Diarmas. I liked her in the film. I didn't mind some of the direction of the film. I know that there's obviously a lot of reshoots that went on play. I think it's just a film that went out of hand. If this had like a $40 million budget, like what Karate Kid did, right, we'd be talking about something that was fine. But $90 million budget seems actually quite high for what it was. And I don't think, looking back, it's worked as well as it did at the time for me. I might watch it and be fine, but you're never going to see me like wanting to. If I buy this film, it's because it's been on like 3 for £30 on 4Ks in a year's time, and I'm trying to like pad out a couple of my franchises that I'm behind on. It sort of has that sitting with me, and that's how I do look at some of my like films. Like when we do reviews, a bit behind the scenes, curiosity's sake, I always talk about, do I recommend this film? And I think I always say, like, watch it immediately, or you might already be sold on it, so don't need to, or watch it in this format, in this way, blah, blah, blah. I've never really like done the Streets DVD because I'm not as negative with them, but Ballerina is one where it is that, like, if you saw it at the cinema, you're probably never going to see it again unless you rewatch them all for a new John Wick film. And that's how I honestly feel about it 2 months on. Almost 3 months on. But another film that came out in June, How to Train Your Dragon, that released on the 13th, on a $150 million budget, it grossed $627 million at the box office. Very good numbers. And its Rotten Tomatoes score 76%, which is all right. For a live-action remake, again, of obviously an animated film, the second one, The Summit, it performed very well. It's got the family audience dynamic. It's got obviously people that grew up with the animated films audience going in. I went in, and I actually probably going to get shot for this. I preferred the live-action to the animated. And I'm actually really intrigued to see the sequel, to see what they want to do with the other live-action films. I think it lends itself to live-action very well, but I do understand people's issues. But I guess because I know the background of the animation, the history with it, I've seen the trilogy now. But I am sat thinking, I'm fine with this live-action. I'm all right with that. I like the cast. I like the visuals. There was a lot that worked for it for me, and the film's been a good success, and they'll be very happy with how that performed. And we're going to talk about another low-budget film now, a film that came out, which has only just come out here in the UK, and I haven't seen it criminally. Materialists came out on the 13th of June in America. You might be thinking, why are you talking about an indie film? Well, it's not an indie film, but this budget's $20 million. It's not a blockbuster by any means. It's still a decent budget. Starring Chris Evans, Pedro Pascal, and Dakota Johnson. There's your budget. It grossed $85 million at the box office, and obviously it's a follow-up to Past Lives. Great for the filmmaker. The Rotten Tomatoes score is 80%, and I have a few friends that didn't like this as such. I've had other friends that did like it. The UK's been shafted again, but that's performed very well. They'll be very happy with that. And I guess, we'll talk about Pedro Pascal a few more times because he's all over this summer. But we're going to move into 28 Years Later, which is a film I liked. I know Tate covered the reviews on these. I got to watch all three for the first time this summer. Released on the 20th of June, and on a $60 million budget, it grossed $150 million at the box office. Very happy with that. I've really enjoyed the film for what it's worth in conversation. I actually like the ending. I'm a bit sick and twisted with my enjoyment of that. I love the idea that this is obviously a contextual. How do I say it correctly on a stream? In 2002, when this pandemic happens and the UK's history alternates, not only do they have the Sycamore tree, but Jimmy Savile is not ousted as a paedophile. So there's a really interesting dynamic setting up for the Bone Temple in January, and I'm quite intrigued to see what they do with it. And I know Nia DaCosta's directing, not Danny Boyle. Obviously, we know Cillian Murphy's going to be returning. I'm really optimistic for that, and I really did like 20 Years Later, if I'm honest. I had a lot of fun with it. And on the same day as that came another animated film, Pixar's Elio, which is going to go down as the biggest bomb of the summer, which is a shame. Scored a decent 83% of Rotten Tomatoes, but with a budget of 150 to 200 million, it's only grossed 151 million so far. I know people were hoping for an Elemental style run, and for those unfamiliar with Elemental, it was this insane, I think it was Pixar's lowest ever opening weekend, but then the numbers basically didn't drop, and as every week went by, more and more people were watching it, and it ended up being a big hit for them, given the fact it was their lowest ever opening. So that didn't happen to Elio. More articles came out about the film was very toward production, upstairs politics involved at Disney, film being rewritten from it being about a single mother to having a passed away family, having the adoptive aunt, very reminiscent of Lilo and Stitch, I must add. Elio himself potentially being coded as autistic or gay, I think, was part of the stories. I can't remember which the articles specified, and it was something Disney didn't want to talk about or go into, and many things have changed from that. Now, there's been a lot of obviously politics, not just in the real world, but within Disney in the last few years, particularly with Pixar, particularly with when their animators come on board to try and do stuff. I know there's an outrageous Snoop Dogg article today, which I won't sort of give any more sentence to, but I'm a bit disappointed how Elliot performed, but at the same time, I'm not surprised. It's come out in an absolutely rampacked summer blockbuster season. The marketing for the film was non-existent. I'm sorry, there's no marketing. And all the families were going to obviously go and watch Lilo and Stitch. We're going to go watch House Train and Dragon, not Elio, which is a shame because I liked it and think there's an audience for it. I actually think a lot of kids would really enjoy it with the sci-fi stuff, what they do in it. Very colourful, very entertaining, some really cool animated designs, different worlds, different alien species. I think kids would actually love this. I think it's just an awful release date for them. And I think that's really killed the film, if I'm honest. But we're going to get into some heavy hitters soon. So 27th of June, 1 week on, the F1 films come out. Sorry, just call it F1. I can't call it the or movie or film. I'm in a minority on this that didn't like this film too much. I think I put, if I care about star ratings, 3-star on Letterboxd. I love Joseph Kosinski as a filmmaker. I love Tron Legacy. It's one of my favorite films. I love Top Gun Maverick, one of my favorite films. The thought of him doing an F1 film had me sold, but unfortunately, there is just too many things that went with this I just didn't like. I did not like Brad Pitt's performance in the film. I do not care that the story is about an elderly racer coming back. A 60-year-old cannot be in F1 and would not be able to be in F1. It is too old for that structure. It did not work. It did not work for the context of F1 being about F1. It should have just been called Apex Racing. I thought the soundtrack was horrific. Not the Hans Zimmer score, as in the soundtrack of just awful pop songs. And it ended up being like an engineered advert for F1, signed by F1. I don't think that was the original intention by the filmmaker nor the producers, but I think that's what it became, and they had to do that for F1 to do its own thing. And I think it's incredible that on a budget of 300 million, it's now on 603 million, and it continues to grow, and it's performed very well in IMAX. Apple Studios have an absolute win on their hand. They finally cracked the cinema, the big screen release. That's because they're working with Warner Brothers, who got it right. As expected, the film performed amazingly internationally and didn't perform well in America, which, should there be anyone from F1 watching, which there won't be, a very polite reminder that F1's bigger than America. You can try and Americanize it all you want. It performed everywhere else but America at that level. So that's something that they should really take into account. But the film just about been a success. Didn't think it'd make 600 mil. Absolute fair play to it. $300 million budget. Insane. Should not be that high. Ridiculous. Still not the best F1 film either, so I'm going to move on from that. And the film that came out on the same day is a film I've not seen yet, Megan 2.0. One of the bombs of the summer, $25 million budget, and it grossed $39 million. It's Rotten Tomatoes sits on 59%. I loved the first Megan. I thought it was really entertaining. It came out in January. Why did they release the sequel in summer? I think, did I read the producers release a statement about releasing Megan and they got it wrong? They absolutely got it wrong. Stick to the roots. They tried to do too much. It didn't work out for them. So they fall by the sword. And that moves us into July, which we're going to have a lot of fun talking about the next two films. So Jurassic World Rebirth came out in the second on a $180 million budget with no IMAX release because of F1, with no IMAX release because of also Superman coming up, no premium screens or premium formats as they're called. Directed by Gareth Edwards, Jurassic World Rebirth on that $180 million budget grossed $844 million. One of the biggest hits of the summer. Fair play to everyone involved in this. I really liked this film, and it's Rotten Tomatoes it to 51%. I understand why others don't like this film, but I had a lot of fun with it. I thought it worked. I thought it was one of the better Jurassic sequels. I probably have it sort of third, fourth in the ranking. I know I did a short on that as well, but I had so much fun with this film. I adored it. I saw it twice at the cinema in the end. And I think to gross that amount without the premium screens is actually even more of a win for Universal. And I'm curious if there's going to be another sequel. I know, like the others, it performed very well internationally, particularly the Asian markets, where dinosaur films do obviously perform very well at. People forget, although Dominion was that bad, Dominion grossed $1 billion. That is worth mentioning. So yeah, big win for Universal. That was a film I thought, if I'm honest, I've not got an ego. I thought Jurassic Park was going to bomb. And I was worried, like, could this be the first Jurassic Park film to bomb? But that one sentence of fact just comes true. Everyone wants to watch dinosaurs. It's tried, it's tested, and it works, and people like it to work, and it did work for me. So I'm happy to see another one. So next up, we've got Superman, which is going to be a big discussion piece. Released on the 11th of July with a budget of $225 million, with, quote, a target of $500 million. The film, at this day and time, 26th of August, has grossed $604 million. And it's comfortably in the top 10 highest grossing films of the year. And it is likely to be, and well, it is going to be the highest grossing superhero film of 2025. No one saw that coming 3-4 months ago. Fair play to James Gunn. Once again, fair play to Warner Brothers, who I've spoken about the success in this with Superman, with F1, with Minecraft, which we have to sort of give them credit, and obviously Final Destination. I'm going to talk about them a few more times as well, which is crazy. But Superman, fantastic news for DC, for James Gunn, for the new DCU. I'm fully invested in that. There's a Peacemaker season 2 review on the channel. I probably should plug that. And obviously we also spoke about Creature Commandos, but with this really interesting predicament with DC, where by having this great first hit on their hands, that, you know, the audience turned up, had strong word of mouth. People were talking about the film. Reviews liked it, 83% Rotten Tomatoes. I liked it, and I'm not the biggest fan of Superman. There's a lot of conversations internally in the industry. You've seen directors come out and say how much they've enjoyed it too. I'm very curious for Supergirl next year to really see we'll be building a new DCU, not to get into the typical conversation of comic book films, if there are too many, but audiences will go if they are good, and Superman proved that people were willing to go. And it's interesting that and F1 basically has a race on their hand, that they're $1 million apart in their current box office. I do think F1 will overtake it. But I think this is a great win for DC, as I said, and I'm excited to see what follows and what future announcements there's going to be. So we've got a few minor films before we get to a big one. I'm going to talk very briefly about I Know What You Did Last Summer, released on the 18th of July. On a budget of $18 million, it grossed 64. That's a box office hit in its own right. It's another long sequel, as in part of a franchise. I've never seen any of them. Its Rotten Tomatoes is pretty bad at 37%, but the studio will be happy at how that film has performed financially. That's worked for them. Great. I'm going to move on because I want to talk about it. And I've got another somewhat smaller film to talk about, which in the summer, Pedro Pascal. We have Eddington, which is just released here in the UK, just like Materialists. And it's not a blockbuster, but on a $25 million budget, it's only hit 11 million and is obviously been a colossal failure for the box office. 70% Rotten Tomatoes, not a film many people are talking about. I don't know much about it myself, but I wanted to bring it there because everyone spoke about how Pedro Pascal's and everything, and he's been in a lot of films this summer. And that's going to lead lovely into the Fantastic Four First Steps, which a film I very much enjoyed, released on the 25th of July. On what they're saying is a $200 million budget, at this point in time, is grossed $490 million, which is a hit. It's a hit on its hand. It's financially worked for Disney, for Marvel. It's Rotten Tomatoes 87%. It's gone down very well with critics. But I would argue that that has underperformed in the financial hope of what Marvel were looking for. That if a Fantastic Four film, which I think is a good film, which has got some pretty big names in it, up and coming actors, I'm not saying they're prime, but people like Pedro, who is currently A-list Hollywood. If the film is good, it's taken on such an iconic Marvel family. The fact this film has underperformed is really eye-opening, I think, to others. I know Kevin Feige's spoken in interviews about how Marvel has underperformed, that there's been too much going on with Disney Plus, there's been too many shows, there's been too much expectation on it all. They will be worried that this film has hit 490, that will probably won't get to 600. To be outgrossed by a Superman is not something people thought was on the table. To be the lowest grossing, of that Superman Jurassic in that big 2-3 week run, when it's had basically a 3 month at the box office after, it's not had any big releases next door to it. It's very interesting and telling. And where I go with this is the conversation on Marvel. This is likely to be the first year since the MCU has been a thing that there isn't going to be a Marvel film in the top 10 highest grossing film at the box office. Now, when I say Marvel, I actually mean the MCU specifically. I think that's concerning. They've had 3 films, none of them are going to be on there coming in. Presuming Avatar makes 10p, there is a good chance none of them are on there. And I think Marvel and Disney will be a little bit worried. I think with a lot of negativity going around Doomsday at the moment, with so-called unfinished stories, with so-called actors falling out, other actors coming out saying they don't know who they filmed, what they filmed with, they didn't know anything, it was all this, that, the other. Word of mouth is mega for this series, and the worry Marvel should have is that I think the general audience has disappeared. I think they will come back for the Avengers, but I think the Avengers are going to be the max. I don't want to talk about money now. I've not even seen an official still from the film, but for budgets that are probably going to be 400, 500 million, like what we spoke about Mission Impossible, Marvel really need to deliver with those. And I think they'll be fine financially, but I'm actually more concerned from a storytelling perspective and a quality perspective that I'm not going to use the S word that's become a thing online now. That's aligned at Marvel, but they need to improve the production. I think Fantastic Four was a massive improvement. Some of the other stuff visually, from that perspective, it looked so much better than anything they've done in a long time. It looked consistently great. A couple of odd scenes you could clock there were reshoots, but nothing disgustingly open of awful visual effects, of awful that. And at the budgets they make these films, it did look like a $200 million film. I could understand and see that on screen, and I can't say the same for a lot of other Marvel ones. And the damage might be done from their lack of consistency across the last, 6 years, we can say now. And it will be a worry for them, because the studio that could do no wrong all those years ago is now struggling to, and like what I spoke about for Thunderbolts, a film that I thought was very good, that reviewed well, that people would enjoy. People didn't care about it to go to the cinema to watch it. People aren't going to the cinema to see Marvel now. The general audience who pulls in the real money, who pulls in the proper money, what we spoke about with films like Jurassic Park making 800 million, they are not there for Marvel right now. And Marvel's goal is now to find these and get them back on their side. So that's Kevin Feige's issue to deal with. Spider-Man will be a massive hit because it's Spider-Man. Him and Batman are in their own level of, doesn't matter who's in it, it'll be fine. But let's talk about August. So I want to wrap this out with an hour. The Naked Gun, released on the 1st of August. One of the funniest films of the year. Rotten Tomatoes at 88%. People loved it. I don't know anyone that's seen it that disliked it. Proper old school traditional slapstick humor. On a budget of $42 million, it's grossed 86, which is great. I know they spoke about it in interviews saying they don't know if they do another. Liam Neeson just wants to do one. They had the right story and the right idea, and they think, you know what, we can do another, go do another. If it's as good, I'll watch it. If it's as good, it'll be as liked. People will go and see it. People have gone and watched Naked Gun because it's funny. People are talking about how funny the film is. That's why it worked. That's why it's been successful. And it's so refreshing to have an adult comedy as well releasing. We just do not get enough comedies these days. So I absolutely love The Naked. I'm so happy it's performed well. And the week after Naked Gun, we get Freaky Friday coming out on the 8th of August. Film's performed very well. $45 million budget, grossing 113, 73% Rotten Tomatoes. I really liked it. My sisters really liked it. It's done well. I'm very happy for Lindsay Lohan to get her time back on the big screen. And you just know 5 years ago this would have been put on Disney Plus, and the studios got themselves a hit now because they put it back in the cinemas. And I think Disney know that, and it just sort of embarrasses Netflix that little bit more. And obviously, another film we have to talk about, the penultimate one in the video, is Weapons, which came on the 8th of August. 94% Rotten Tomatoes. And on a $38 million budget, right now it's sitting at $199 million at the box office. That's obviously going to continue to make more money because it only came out, just under 3 weeks ago. One of my favorite films of the year. Fantastic film in its own right. That again has had word of mouth. I've had people talking about it. People are going to see it. It's busy. There's an expectation. There's an event status flowing around it. And because it's lower budget, it's been able to perform that much better. And it was almost a film that had Pedro Pascal just to round out the Pedro Pascal summer. But absolutely love Weapons. You can check the review out on the channel from a few weeks ago. And where I'm going to end the monthly chats on, because I've got a few more things to talk about, is Nobody 2, which isn't got the budget of a blockbuster, but to me it sort of rounds out summer blockbuster season. On a $25 million budget, right now it's sitting at $28 million. Its Rotten Tomatoes is 78%. It's too early to call it a hit or a miss, whatever we've been doing with that. But will it make it 50 mil? Probably not. But I like Nobody 2. I think it will find life, and I think it'll be fine in the long term. I enjoyed it. There's a lot of fun to be had of that, and I think I sort of do recommend people to an extent to the cinema. Now, from the August releases, if we're talking cinema expectations at the moment, I'd be saying go watch Weapons. Still go watch Weapons. But that's kind of where I'm rounding out with going through the films. I hope this just didn't feel like too much of a Wikipedia checkbox video. So any feedback I do appreciate. I've got a few more things to talk about, but that's the calendar side. I'm not going to recap them all. But I do want to talk about the highest grossing films of the year so far, which I do think is actually quite important to this. And if we talk about summer blockbuster season in itself, which I think is quite important to have a discussion about. In 10th place, we've got Sinners with $365 million. 9th place, we've got Thunderbolts with $382 million. 8th place, we've got Fantastic Four with $490 million. 7th place, we've got Mission Impossible with $597 million. 6th place, we've got F1 the movie with $603. 5th place, Superman with $604. 4th place, How to Train Your Dragon with $626 million. 3rd place, Jurassic World Rebirth with $844 million. 2nd place, Minecraft movie with $955 million. And the highest grossing film of summer blockbuster season this summer, set, done, dusted, Lilo & Stitch $1.032 billion. So that's just the highest grossing summer blockbuster releases. I'm not doing the whole calendar year. I don't really do that sort of thing. But for anyone that was curious, that is them at the moment. For my own personal conversation, if I was looking at this summer blockbuster season as a whole, if I want to just very quickly talk about what I have as my top 3 of the summer, and there's not recency bias with me saying this first one, in 3rd place, I have Weapons, which was a film that I absolutely loved, that I recommended literally 2 minutes ago for everybody to see. It's an original concept. I don't do horror as much, and it worked for the horror genre. There's a really interesting story around it, and it's very much a film I recommend for people to go into with as little knowledge as they can. And I think they'll have a blast with it if they're not afraid of it. There's just a really great story that's told within that. Second favourite film of summer blockbuster season this year, I've put as Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. Now, I know I spoke about the flaw of the first hour. It's a real issue for the film, but the highs that come with it, the use of IMAX, the plane sequences, the underwater submarine sequences, we can talk about it now. The ensemble casts that is involved in that. I've now seen Severance, so I know how much better a certain character is if you're unfamiliar who pops up in this, if maybe the line of the year. Dead Reckoning's got everything you want, and it's the right way for Tom Cruise to round out the Mission Impossible film series. So credit to that involved and for that series of being a staple of the last sort of decade of my life, I guess we can say. But what I'm saying is my favourite film of summer blockbuster season. We want to go all the way back to April. It is Sinners, Ryan Coogler's latest film. It's one of my favourite films of the year so far. I think it's 3rd. If I was looking at off the top of my head, it's my 3rd favorite from the year so far, I think. But for summer blockbuster season, we can qualify it as that. I'm so happy this film's performed well. It's got a great cast, and I really hope it gets the recognition heading into award season that the film deserves. and I'm really excited to see what comes next for a lot of not just Ryan Coogler, not just the composer of Garrington or Michael B. Jordan, some of the ensemble cast actors that are making their debuts or actors I've not seen anything before. I really enjoyed this, and it's one I absolutely recommend people to go out and see. So that's my top 3 films of the summer. Next up, and I'm going to end this video, let's talk about the last big releases for this year. Or not big releases. What are my most anticipated films that are due to come out at the end of 2025? As is usual, every year, most of my most hyped films tend to come out in summer. They do tend to be blockbuster orientated. But I've wanted to pinpoint out a couple for the sake of the hype of what I've spoke about on this channel for a decade, for the poster that's behind me in the background. I am anticipated for Tron Ares. I'm reluctantly anticipated because I do not like Jared Leto as an actor, and I do not wish for him to be in Tron. The 9 Inch Nails score sounded great, and I know they're releasing it at the end of September. I'm going to try and hold off until I've seen the film to do some stuff on that, and we'll be covering Tron on the channel in the lead up to that film's release. But I'm excited, and I'm just really hopeful that it isn't just as bad as every other Jared Leto film has been for the last sort of 10 years, bar Blade Runner. I'm excited for Avatar: Fire and Ash because James Cameron is James Cameron. His films have a lure that you need to see on the biggest screen possible with that new technology. I like The Way of Water. I've not re-seen it since I first saw it at the cinema, but I do want to watch this one, and I guess we'll have to get the 3D glasses out once more, won't we? So I'm sold on that. I will be there to see that film. And then the other two I want to very briefly talk about, films we haven't got a lot of information about. Knives Out 3 is one I'm very anticipated for. I forgot the full title of this film, but I'm sold. It's opening London Film Festival, so if we cover that festival, I will talk about it on the channel. If we don't, I might go to like a regional screening on the night. And the other one I'm anticipated for is the Peaky Blinders film, which has got some weird new name. I think it's The Immortal Man, which sounds stupid. Just call it a Peaky Blinders movie. I'm excited. Cillian Murphy, obviously, coming back to the role for one final time to see how Peaky Blinders can end as a story. It's one of my favourite series. It's got a great ensemble cast, and I'm really excited to see what they do with the film on this. So they're probably my most anticipated films for the rest of this year. Obviously, we've got a lot of other releases. We've got films coming out this week, and I need to be doing reviews for. It's been a very busy time on the channel, so I want to thank everybody that's been involved, whether it be commenting on videos, commenting on streams, liking our reels, sharing our reels, reposting stuff. We always do appreciate it. And it is one of the fun things about doing the channel is that I do get to talk about things a bit more openly than I can before. So that is me rounding out. If you like this video, as I said, please do hit the like button. Any help is supportive. We've got a lot of videos happening. I mentioned new films coming out this week. The Roses is one of them. There's going to be a video on the Order of the Phoenix on Thursday as part of the ongoing series. And I've forgot the name of the Austin Butler film coming out on Friday as well. Caught Stealing, that's the one. So there's a few new release reviews to come out. There's a lot of other videos happening on the channel. We got wrestling stuff. We got another pay-per-view this weekend. We'll be covering that. So there's a lot of things happening. We are keeping very busy. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.